And if you like the video or any other content on the channel, feel free to subscribe. For today's deep dive, we're going to go over the Venerable Land Raider. So we'll go over the datasheet itself. Points won't be a factor, just so I don't have to go back over these with points changes. So I'm just going to go over these, how well they do in the detachments with the rules and the stratagems, without including points, just so we don't have to go back and do these every couple months. In depth on the abilities in the datasheet as well. Then we'll go through each detachment in the Custodes Codex, their detachment rules, and any stratagems that the Venerable Land Raider can take advantage of. We'll look at the detachment and give a general game plan and some tips in using the Land Raider in each detachment. And finally, we'll give the Land Raider a score out of 10 for each of these Custodes detachments. We'll start with the datasheet first. So the Venerable Land Raider has a movement of 10, toughness of 12, 2-up save, 16 wounds, a leadership of 6, and an OC of 5. And if it's damaged, so between 1 and 5 wounds remaining, each time attack is made, subtract 1 from the hit roll. And then our ranged weapons. So we have 2 of these Godhammer las cannons. So we have, they're 48 inches, 2 attacks each, ballistic skill of 4, strength 12, AP 3, D6 plus 1. So we're going to have 4 shots of these all together. Then we have a hunter killer missile. We only have 1 shot of this, so you got to make it count. 48 inches, 1 shot, ballistic skill of 2, strength 14, AP 3, and damage D6. Then we have a storm bolter, rapid fire, 24 inches, 2 attacks, ballistic skill 2, strength 4, AP 0, damage 1. And then there is also a twin heavy bolter, and this one does have sustained hits 1 and is twin linked, so you get to re-roll your wounds. 36 inches range, 3 attacks, ballistic skill 2, 5 strength, AP 1, damage 2. And then our melee weapons, nothing to write home about, is the armored tracks, 6 attacks, weapon skill 4, strength 6, AP 0, damage 1. And then for our war gear options, can be equipped with the hunter killer missile and the storm bolter, but there's no reason why not to. It does come equipped stock with the 2 Godhammer las cannons and the twin heavy bolters. So if you are using the Warhammer app, you would have to go in there and add those just for some reason. Unit composition, just your 1 Land Raider. You can't put any more than 1 of these in a group. The transport capacity of the Venerable Land Raider is 6 Custodes infantry, and that's sisters or Custodes infantry themselves. So you're not going to put sisters in this. Usually you're going to put sisters in a Rhino if you want some transport for your sisters. So you're usually going to put some Terminators or another 6-man inside this Venerable Land Raider. And then for the abilities, we have Deadly Demise D6, pretty self-explanatory there, blows up D6. Martial Kata, so yes, the Venerable Land Raider does know karate, so you can use sustained hits 1 or lethal hits in the melee phase. And then it has assault ramp, and that is the premier ability of the Land Raider. So the assault ramp, we will go over that, just some things and how to use that. Now we'll go over assault ramp, what it does, and some tips and tricks you can use to take advantage of this ability in your Custodes list. Assault ramp, each time a unit disembarks from this model after it's made a normal move, so you can't advance and do this, that unit is still eligible to declare charge this turn. This is a fantastic ability for a Custodes transport. We have very deadly melee, but it's slow-moving units. This allows us to get around some of our movement issues. With the Godhammer las cannons and the assault ramp, our Venerable Land Raider can be deadly from pretty much any range. You'll be able to shoot with your Godhammer las cannons, and if anything gets close to you, you can jump out with your unit in the Land Raider and charge them. We do have access to a Forge World transport, but does not have access to Assault Ramp. I do believe it's a shooting ability, which doesn't really pair with our army that well. Assault Ramp is the key selling factor to taking a transport with our expensive, already tanky infantry units. If you can't really charge over your transport, you're not really taking advantage of the melee-centric builds that Custodes really have. Now that we've gone through the datasheet and the abilities, we will now go through each detachment and just give them a rank out of 10, depending on how the detachment rule and the stratagems benefit the Land Raider, as well as what role the Land Raider will play and how useful it will be in that role. So our detachments, we have the Null, Maiden, Vigil, Shield Host, Talons of the Emperor, and Auric Champions. First, we'll start with the Null, Maiden, Vigil, just to get this one out of the way. So the detachment rule is Creeping Dread. In the battle shock step of the opponent's army, if any unit below starting strength is within 12 inches of a Psychona unit, the enemy unit must take a battle shock test. If below half strength, -1 to that battle shock roll. Again, like a lot of our codex, the Venerable Land Raider has very little synergy with the Null, Maiden, Vigil detachment. It's just going to be side kind of units that are going to be getting any kind of synergy or any kind of these detachment rules with the Null, Maiden, Vigil. And like I said, the detachment rule and the stratagems will not work. And unlike the Auric Champions, who also have no detachment synergy, the Land Raider is quite useless in transporting sisters. The Psychona Rhino can fit 12 sisters models, while the Venerable Land Raider can only transport 6 Adeptus Custodes models. Sisters are Adeptus Custodes models, but you're not going to pay 3 times the price for 6 less models in a transport. You could use this to transport your Custodes models that you bring in the Null, Maiden, Vigil list. Maybe bring a Venerable Land Raider, fill it full of Terminators. But by the time we pay the points for the Land Raider and the Custodes we're going to put inside the Land Raider, it's probably not worth the points investment in the Null, Maiden, Vigil. Probably better off just running Aluris Terminators by themselves, just deep striking them around the board using Golden Light, just to get a little bit of high damage infantry around the board. With the low transport capacity, for the price, because this thing's always going to be over 200 points, no detachment rules or stratagems available to the Venerable Land Raider, I have to give this a well below average score of 3. You're just going to bring a Psychona Rhino for your sister's transport in the Null, Maiden, Vigil. Next we have Auric Champions. Auric Champions detachment rule is assemblage of might. At the start of your command phase, select 1 unit from your opponent's army. Until the next command phase, each time an Adeptus Custodes character model makes an attack that targets that enemy unit, add 1 to the wound roll. That can be shooting or melee. Even though the Venerable Land Raider does not benefit from the detachment rule or any of the stratagems, I think there's still a place for the Land Raider in Auric Champions lists. The Land Raider does have some decent long-range guns. Our las cannons do hit on 2, so that's nothing to laugh about, but they're just not as potent as a Caladius Grav tank in shooting. It does give some protection to our units, even more so when you're running them as solo character units. Having a nice armored Land Raider taxi to get them up the board can be very useful. We could pop 3 Aluris Terminator captains in there and 3 Blade Champions and a single Land Raider. Drop them out where you need to drop them. That could be interesting. I think that could kind of work with the Auric Champions. No detachment synergy with the rules at all. With some decent shooting and transport options, I do give the Venerable Land Raider a 7 out of 10. I do see some ways to make some fun lists using the Land Raider and the Auric Champions. So let's move on to some of the more interesting ones. So we have Shield Host, and the Shield Host detachment rule is called Martial Mastery. Once per battle at the start of the round, you can use the Martial Mastery ability. If you do, until the next round, each Adeptus Custodes model with the Martial Kata ability gain critical hits on 5s and improve the AP of melee weapons equipped by Adeptus Custodes with the Martial Kata ability by 1. This attachment ability will not really come into play for the Venerable Land Raider. It does have the Kata ability, so it will benefit from the Martial Mastery phase, but the melee profile and the armored tracks are nothing to be excited about. 6 attack, weapon skill 4, AP 0, damage 1. Martial Mastery will not make a big difference with that damage profile. There is a few useful stratagems in the detachment though. With the playstyle of 1 turn of insane melee damage, the Land Raider does have a job to get those melee units safely and reliably into combat. Now let's go over those stratagems I talked about. So the first one we have is Arcane Genetic Alchemy. In any phase, just after mortal wounds have been allocated to your Adeptus Custodes model, that Adeptus Custodes model's unit until the end of the phase, models in your unit have a 4-up feel no pain against mortal wounds. This stratagem could actually come in handy with the Venerable Land Raider. Opponents will use grenades, tank shock, and other abilities to use mortal wounds to try to bypass the toughness 12 and the 2-up save of the Land Raider. Arcane Genetic Alchemy can be used in any phase after the mortal wounds have been allocated, which means we can wait and see how many mortal wounds are incoming before we spend the 1 CP to have the 4-up feel no pain against them. Arcane Genetic Alchemy can help keep our Land Raider on the table much longer than opponents might think. The next one I want to talk about is called Multi-Potentiality. For 1 CP, this is a strategic ploy. In your movement phase, 1 Adeptus Custodes unit from your army that fell back this phase, until the end of your turn, that unit is eligible to shoot, declare charge in a turn in which it fell back. We can use this stratagem to fall back out of engagement range and still shoot at our full 2+. We like to use our Land Raiders to screen and tie things up. We could be in combat with a unit that may destroy our Land Raider in the following combat phase, so we could use Multi-Potentiality to fall back just out of engagement range, so we still be a screen for the movement the following turn, as well as still getting to shoot, allowing us to get around being chopped to death in the following combat phase. Multi-Potentiality is not a battle tactic stratagem. which means the stratagem could be needed elsewhere on the board just because you do have all your infantry running around, but it is still a nice option in our toolbox when needed. If there was a target that really needed to be taken out, you could fall back and charge into that target for tank shock for 1 CP, just giving you some more options. And the last stratagem I want to talk about for the shield host is Archaeotech Munitions. For 1 CP, it is a war gear stratagem. In your shooting phase, 1 Adeptus Custodes unit from your army, excluding Psychona units that has not been selected to shoot this phase, select either lethal hits or sustained hits 1 ability. Until the end of the phase, ranged weapons equipped by models in your unit have the selected ability. With all the guns on the Venerable Land Raider, I think this is a viable stratagem to be used. I would select sustained hits 1 ability unless we are shooting into a target with higher than toughness 12, then you'll go lethal. And sustained hits 1 on our las cannons could be spicy. And this stratagem does help our Venerable Land Raider get closer to the Custodes Grav Tank shooting without that Custodes Grav Tank Forge World price. Now let's go over the final score for the shield host. If you do not have access to the very expensive, overpriced Forge World tank, the Venerable Land Raider paired with some of these stratagems can make a very potent high utility vehicle. In some lists, I may even prefer the Land Raider. The Venerable Land Raider can be used to help keep our big units safe until that Martial Mastery Go phase. And we can also use it to screen or hold objectives. With an OC of 5, it can be decent for holding on to an objective while being hard to kill unless the opponents bring some anti-tank. And the assault ramp allows us to move and then charge out of the Land Raider, plus the extra buff to the shooting from Archaeotech Munitions makes the Venerable Land Raider a threat from all ranges on the battlefield. The negative to the Land Raider is it does not have any real melee. I still feel Shield Host is our best chance at an all-infantry list in this version of our codex, so this could be my own personal bias on the score, but with the Shield Host needing as much melee-capable units to take advantage of that 1 turn of Martial Mastery, I give the Venerable Land Raider an 8.5 out of 10. I can also see the case to score this higher because I originally had this as a 7, but after going through the stratagems and the detachment and just the different units that you can put inside this Land Raider, I brought it up to an 8.5. Final detachment, Talons of the Emperor. And I do believe a Land Raider in the Talons of the Emperor is going to add some really good utility and some decent damage. So the detachment ability for the Talons is Revered Companions. Psychona units gain the Null Aegis ability, and while the Adeptus Custodes unit is within 6 inches of a Psychona unit, that unit gains a 5-up Feel No Pain against mortal wounds and psychic attack. And then all other Adeptus Custodes unit gain the Deadly Unity ability. And this one is while a Psychona unit is within 6 inches of a Adeptus Custodes unit, that Psychona unit will gain +1 to hit. The Venerable Land Raider's large haul can make this a great unit to help spread around the Deadly Unity while being close enough to gain that 5-up Feel No Pain Null Aegis. While being close enough to gain that 5-up Feel No Pain from mortal wounds from Null Aegis, even though the detachment ability may be lacking, this is still a great unit to spread around the Revered Companions ability. The stratagems in the Talons of the Emperor detachment is really what brings up the utility and the viability of bringing a Land Raider in the list. So we have Hunt as 1, and it is 1 CP, a strategic ploy, and this has to be used in the start of your movement phase, up to 2 Adeptus Custodes units from your army. Until the end of the turn, your unit is eligible to shoot or declare a charge in a turn in which it fell back. The restriction is that you can only select 2 units if one and only one of them is a Psychona unit, and both are within 6 inches of each other. Like the Shield Host attachment, having a stratagem that can get us out of some potential Land Raider ending combat is very useful. We can fall back into screening lanes or into some other shot lanes and then shoot. This stratagem can keep our Land Raiders from being pinned down in melee combat. And the next one we have is Empiric Severance. For 1 CP, a battle tactic in your opponent's shooting or fight phase just after an enemy unit has selected its targets. 1 Adeptus Custodes unit from your army that is selected as the target of 1 or more of those attacking units, and 1 friendly Psychona unit that is within 6 inches of that Adeptus Custodes unit. And to the end of the phase, your unit has a 4-up Feel No Pain against psychic and mortal wounds. So not as useful against tank shock since that is in the charge phase. We also have to use it before the wounds are allocated. That makes spending the 1 CP a bit more hit and miss. Depending on the amount of mortal wounds taken, this could be very useful or a waste of CP. And the last one I want to talk about for Talons of the Emperor is Talon Pincer, and this was a big one. For 1 CP, battle tactic, and this is used in your opponent's movement phase just after an enemy unit ends a normal, advanced, or fallback move. Up to 2 Adeptus Custodes units from your army that are within 9 inches of that enemy unit, your unit can make a normal move up to 6 inches. Restrictions for this one is you cannot select units that are within engagement range of 1 or more enemy units, and just like the other one, you can only select 2 units if one and only one of them is a Psychonic unit and both are within 6 inches of each other. Now, this is the reason we want to take a Land Raider in our Talons list. The Venerable Land Raider can provide some good long-range shooting for the list, and this stratagem gives our Land Raider so much utility. We can use it to move out of shot lines, or move to make a charge 6 inches harder, or even use it to move block an enemy unit. Maybe they plan on charging something else, you move this and tank in front of them, now they can't charge your more vulnerable unit. And another big thing about this stratagem is other units can use this to embark into your Land Raider. Since the stratagem does not have any restrictions about getting into transports, so you can use this to hop back into a transport. So this can make a scary Land Raider full of large Terminators who can charge in their turn out of the Land Raider. Then when the opponent tries to move to maybe charge them or get a little closer, get some shot lines, and if they move within 9 inches of those Terminators and they are within range of that Venerable Land Raider, they can move their 5 inches, because since you can only move up to your movement, so you move your 5 inches and then you would jump back into the Land Raider. Alrighty, so let's give the Land Raider in the Talons of the Emperor a final score. This is the best detachment for using a Land Raider in my opinion. The stratagems and the game plan just mesh well together with the Venerable Land Raider. This detachment has the Talon Pincer, which allows different ways to interact with the Venerable Land Raider, which includes using other units. Talon Pincer and Hunt as One make it hard to pin down the Land Raider, making it a much harder target to kill, making the points even more worth the price. With the 2 great stratagems and 1 more situational stratagem with the 4-up Feel No Pain against mortals, along with all the utility options as a Venerable Land Raider has in the Talons of the Emperor list, I give the Venerable Land Raider a 9.5 out of 10. An amazing unit for the Talons of the Emperor, only being held back by not having reliable long-range firepower, which this detachment does like to have. Still, it is our only anti-tank shooting besides the Forge World units. A 9.5 out of 10 is still great. I think bringing a Land Raider in this list will just be amazing, just because there's so many tools that we have to use this thing and interact with it. Amazing. Okay, so let's end the video with some final thoughts. We have the scores here. The Null Maiden Vigil 3, Shield Host 8.5, Talons the Emperor with the highest at 9.5, and Auric Champions with 7. The Venerable Land Raider can be a very useful tool in a lot of these detachments, even more so with it being our only form of long-range, high damage besides expensive Forge World tanks. If you do not have access to those tanks, the Venerable Land Raider is the next and only best option. Although using it as a long-range weapon platform does not take advantage of the other thing it's good at, and that is getting scary Custodes melee units safely and quickly up the board. Other than the Null Maiden Vigil detachment, I believe there's room for a Land Raider in every detachment, in particular the Talons of the Emperor detachment. The movement tricks of the detachment are not locked into infantry units, which is a huge bonus, and after doing this deep dive, it makes me want to play more around with the Venerable Land Raider and more of my list, which I think I will do. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Throw in the comments maybe the next deep dive you'd like to see. I think Blade Champion is going to be next, but throw in a unit you may want to see next. I think we're just going to be doing the Codex first, and then once the Codex is done, I will go through some of the Forge World units. And like I always say, thanks for watching, thanks for stopping by.